Good evening. Prime Souls are absolutely iconic bosses in ULTRAKILL that are a monumental test of the player's skill. With one in every act, we have two Prime bosses that we have access to right now, Minas and Sisyphus Prime. The third act's corresponding Prime Soul is still in development, and is therefore a topic of heated debate. A lot of people are speculating what V1 would be fighting against, as well as its place in ULTRAKILL's story. So in this video, I'll summarize some of my favorite fan theories as well as some of my own, according to existing lore and sentiments of the previous Prime bosses, as well as a little bit of imagination. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. A theory I see very often on the internet is the idea of Lucifer or Lucifer Prime being the third Prime Soul, which would make a lot of sense on one hand, but have several caveats on the other. First of all, Lucifer is canon to the plot of ULTRAKILL, meaning he is a character that was at least mentioned once to exist within the story. Furthermore, his banishment to the ninth circle of hell, treachery, according to Dante's Inferno, would make a lot of sense, considering the Prime Sanctums are usually located on the first level of the last layer of an act, in this case being 9-1. However, there are some problems that would make Lucifer not such a good match for the title of Prime Soul. If we look back at our earlier existing Prime bosses, we have several features that they have in common. Both are very prominent characters within Greek mythology, Minas being the ruler of Crete and Sisyphus the man who cheated death. Furthermore, they were both rulers of a layer in hell, lust and greed respectively, and have done something deemed as either treacherous or heretical, be it simply reform a layer out of compassion for its sinners, or plot an all-out insurrection against heaven. Lucifer is an exclusively Christian character that wouldn't really fit these criteria at all. He was banished to hell in an act of rage from God, and I don't really think he would be nominated to rule over fraud, for example. For a similar reason, I don't really see Judas Prime to be probable, although he would make a lot more sense than Lucifer. After all, him being the ruler of fraud, considering him being the ultimate betrayer of Christ, would somewhat make sense, but I think biblical figures should be omitted from being Prime bosses, since it would really clash with the theme of heretic Greek rulers that have been banished to eternal torment. Probably the most popular fan speculation about P-3 is Gabriel Prime. This one I actually like story-wise, but has the same problem as the previous theories, and is sort of paradoxical in some cases. On one hand, the Prime Sanctum would kind of make sense since we would need to kill Gabriel at the end of Godfist's suicide, since it's very heavily implied that we will fight him there. Thus, we would only be able to fight his primified soul in the Sanctum only after we kill him. But him being the third Prime Soul would only really make sense if Hakita decides that he isn't, in fact, going to be the final boss of ULTRAKILL. Let me explain. If Gabriel is the final boss, he will somehow have to be banished to a flesh prison to be accessible as a Prime fight. That begs the question, who would actually be able to do that? If the entire Council of Heaven is, well, dead, who are most likely to be the ones responsible for Prime Sanctums and the Prime Souls getting imprisoned, who would lock Gabriel into the Sanctum? Not to mention that we would, in effect, fight Gabriel twice in the same layer, which would probably screw up the pacing of the level. Furthermore, even if we didn't get Gabriel as a final boss, which I think would be an extremely stupid decision by the writers, given how important a character he is portrayed as, we would still have the same conundrum as with Lucifer or Judas Prime. A Gabriel Prime would completely break the pattern that Minas and Sisyphus have established in regards to Prime Sanctums. Hell itself being a Prime Sanctum is also quite a popular idea, and would make for a pretty fun fight if it wasn't batshit crazy, of course. Hell is the ultimate entity in ULTRAKILL, and is an entire realm created by God. And I'd imagine localizing the scale of Hell itself inside a single Prime Sanctum would also be difficult both lore-wise and gameplay-wise. Also, since we know that Hell has the ability to summon husks and machines, it could work similar to P-2 where there's a huge series of gauntlets before the actual boss fight, but then again, how exactly is V1 going to stand against the actual concept of eternal torment after all that? Now, I understand that we brought down a massive moving skyscraper and literal archangel several times on our journey, and that Prime Sanctums are made to be a difficult challenge to overcome, but how is a man-made machine going to take down something that even God himself cannot undo? If Hakita does somehow manage to fit Hell into a Prime Sanctum, I'd be extremely impressed actually. Now, please note that while I do have some questions and problems with these Prime bosses, they are still really cool concepts, and feel free to propose possible solutions to make them more balanced in terms of the story. My personal pitch for Prime Third would have to be Prometheus Prime, someone I don't see discussed very often by the community, at least a lot less than Judas or Lucifer Prime for example. In my opinion, he would make a perfect fit for a Prime Soul. Being the king of fraud, he tricked the council into letting him let humans find the entrance to hell, sending expeditions as well as setting up blood farms to fuel the war machines and other devices using this technology. He did this in hopes of the humans finding and liberating hell from the cruel grasp of the council. His plan would of course eventually fail, much like his mythological counterpart, and Prometheus is giving the ultimate punishment. After being caught by the council, he is executed for tricking the council and locked in a prime sanctum and treachery, which would besides be very fitting considering he did commit treason and betrayed heaven. The fight itself, I believe, would be preceded by a gauntlet similar to P-2, although some dynamic environmental elements within treachery could also be included, like collapsing cliffs you'll need to dodge while fighting the arenas of enemies. Prometheus' prison could also be something new as opposed to the ones we already had. I'd imagine Prometheus Prime to be simply chained to the room's walls, with several idols protecting the chains from being broken, which in turn are only revealed after clearing an arena of enemies, much like P-2. Once the idols are destroyed, Prometheus immediately breaks the chains and delivers his monologue, before, being the trickster he is, teleporting behind V1 and beginning the fight. I think the chains would also serve as weapons to Prometheus, as both long and short range, maybe even using it as a kind of harpoon like the hideous mass to hinder V1's movements. This version of Prime Third checks all of the criteria that the previous did, a character from Greek mythology that was the heretic ruler of a lair in their act and was banished to the Prime Sanctum as punishment. What do you think P3 will have to offer? Make sure to leave your theories down in the comments below, because I'd really want to hear what your ideas on this topic are. And as always, this was Cold Brew. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Ciao!